Why is it that the people who care the most about their clients are often the most afraid to sell to them? Think about that for a second. The stylists who truly want their clients or their guests to feel confident, the esthetician who wants their guests to feel or to see real skin transformation, or the nail artist who wants someone to walk out feeling beautiful again. Like those are the same people who say things like, I don't want to sound pushy, or I don't want them to feel like I'm selling to them. I just want to take care of them. You guys, and on the surface, that sounds noble. But underneath that belief is something quietly holding the entire beauty industry back. Because what most beauty pros believe about selling is completely backwards. Selling isn't convincing, selling is actually caring. And when a salon truly understands this, something powerful happens. Service providers start to become beauty pros, and service provider owners start becoming true salon owners. And those two identity shifts change everything.
I agree. Inside most salons, there's actually an unspoken rule. We teach teams how to cut hair, color hair, apply lashes, do facials, shape nails, whatever magic you're creating inside of your space. But when it comes to selling, you know, a lot of times we cross our fingers and hope they figure it out. And when they struggle with it, what does your team say? They just say,
Mhm.
I'm just not good at sales. But let's clear a word for a moment because words matter. And the word sell actually comes from an old root word that means to serve, to offer something of value, not to manipulate, not to pressure, not to convince someone to buy something they don't need. Selling at its core is simply this: helping someone move from a problem to a solution. And if you're a beauty professional, you do that every single day.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about this because somewhere along the way, the beauty industry picked up this strange belief, and the strange belief sounds something like this. It's like, if I'm really talented, the work will speak for itself. Have you ever heard that before? Like, if I'm really good, people will just buy. But here's the problem with that belief is like your guests can't buy solutions they don't understand. A guest sits down in the chair and says, Hey, my hair just feels flat, or my skin is breaking out. They know the symptom, but they don't know the solution. And if the professional they trust, the one standing right in front of them, doesn't guide them, they leave the same way they came in. They're still confused, they're still guessing, they're still stuck. And the tragedy is this: the very person who could help them actually stayed silent, not because they didn't care, but because they thought selling meant convincing.
You know, let's imagine something for a moment. Your guest goes home tonight. You know, she walks into her bathroom, looks in the mirror, and the same frustration that she's felt for so long is staring back at her. Her hair still feels flat, her skin still feels inflamed. She doesn't feel like herself at all. Not because you didn't care, but because you didn't say anything, because you didn't want to sell. But what if silence isn't humility? What if silence is actually withholding help?
Mhm. There's a word that comes to mind here, Lindsay. It's the word convincing. I'm sure everybody heard that before. And convincing truly means trying to change someone's mind. Doesn't that feel hard on itself? Convincing means trying to change someone's mind. Have you ever tried to change someone's mind? Maybe a old boyfriend or a old friend. Yeah, it doesn't work really well. But like the
Mm-mm.
opposite of that, caring actually means helping someone see what's already true. So selling is not forcing someone to buy. And Lindsay, I think about the story you tell in the book Think and Get Rich as a Beauty Pro about your dad and the and
Mhm.
he was a car salesman. Would you mind sharing that story with us?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is just the perfect example of the difference between convincing and, truly caring or persuading somebody because, there years ago, my dad had a car dealership and, this young guy came in looking for a red Camaro, and um, another one of the salespeople in there, just wrote him off like, oh, he must be, got family money or trust fund kid or whatever it is, and was like, I'm not even going to waste my time. But, my dad just approached sales in such a totally different way, so he went up to the young kid and was like, hey, the red Camaro, that's a beautiful car. I love that. What has you thinking about a red Camaro right now? Like what made you decide to come in? And, the kid shared the story of when his dad had just recently passed away, and it was a lifelong dream of theirs to own a red Camaro at some point in time, whether that was fixing one up or getting something new. And he said his dad had actually passed away from cancer. And he decided, hey, now's the time. I'm ready for this. I'm still going to live out that legacy that my dad and I had decided on. And, I think what's so interesting, what stands out so much here is that the one salesman just wrote him off and was like, "Oh, that kid," but my dad reaffirmed his decision, like, "Hey, that is a great car. Like, what has you interested in it?" And instead of just writing him off and saying, "Oh, either that kid's not going to buy it or it's, family money and there's going to be somebody else I'm going to have to talk to and it's going to be a lot of work." He just got curious and got caring. And, when you start doing that, it just totally changes your interaction with people.
Mhm. You know what I felt in that moment, what your dad did is like selling is not pressure. Like it truly is just 3 simple things. The diagnosis, which your dad asked him some questions, what had him
Mhm,
interested in that red
mhm.
Camaro, the recommendation, and then the solution. And so when you diagnose, like you truly understand the real problem. Diagnosis actually comes from the root word meaning metamorphosis. So, like, really, if you think about that, that's exactly the transformation that a butterfly goes through is metamorphosis. So, when we're diagnosing guests, like we're truly helping transform their lives. And the next one we talked about the 3 simple things. The next one is recommendation. So, like, you're guiding them towards what will help, and then we talked about creating that solution for them, like you give them the path forward. And truly when you think about that, that's not selling, that's leadership. And leadership is the moment a service provider truly becomes a beauty pro.
Yeah, so, it just has me thinking, why are so many beauty professionals afraid to sell? And usually it comes down to 3 things. First, no one has ever taught them how. You know, Beauty schools teach technical skills, and they teach very few communication skills. If you think about this, the same thing happens in so many industries, like doctors, lawyers. You go to school and you learn all those technical skills, but they never teach you in school how to attract or keep clients or truly how to serve them. It's all
Mm.
technical things. So a lot of times, especially in our industry, professionals enter the industry with some talent, with some technical skills, but they have no language, And, second, when it comes to selling, is they associate selling with pressure. They've experienced bad sales before, where things have been pushy. There's been aggressive tactics. I've even experienced it, a few years after my dad passed away when I went to go buy a vehicle, just having a pushy, aggressive salesperson. And, a lot of times people say sales is bad. If I didn't have my dad showing me sales was good, I could have said sales are bad. I'm never going to sell. And that's what happens with a lot of people that have had a bad experience. They tell themselves, I'll never be that person. But there's a massive difference between pressure and guidance. Just even thinking back to that same story, like, you need a car, you came to get a car, like you're going to buy it, whether there's pressure or there's guidance. And the third thing that I think that we see a lot is, their identity hasn't shifted yet. A lot of times people enter our salons and they see themselves as a stylist or an esthetician or a nail tech, somebody who just provides services, but they don't yet see themselves as a beauty pro. And a beauty pro doesn't just perform services. A beauty pro truly leads transformation. It actually reminds me of, we recently just had somebody on our team who had a guest call back in. The guest had actually box colored her hair twice. One time she tried to lighten it with a blonde box, and then the next time she was like, I'll just use bleach and try to tone it. And I think she even used ChatGPT to try to figure this out. It was pretty scary. Her hair was definitely compromised, and the stylist decided, hey, the best plan would be to let her hair get some repair going on and, try to tone out some of the orange. Anyway, upon, inspecting the formulation, we decided, gosh, what happened was we just missed it by a level. Easy fix. We'll be able to adjust that to get out just a little bit more warmth. But, when I was talking to the beauty pro about it, I said, so what is she using at home then to help with that repair? So that, this is still step one that we're going through, to get to step two, where we're going to add back in some lightening, what's the repair process look like? And she was like, well, she didn't want to buy anything, she didn't want to take anything home. And, in that moment, I realized, hey, this is a big missed opportunity, because we're not going to convince her to bring something home. What we're going to do is we're going to help her understand what's happening to her hair right now, because we can see it. Her hair's stressed. There's been the cysteic acid bonds have broken. We've got to try to get them back together. We need like a little Hail Mary in a failed relationship. We've got to get some counseling going on with those bonds. And if she doesn't get that, her hair's still not going to be ready for it in 4 weeks, And so we talked about, one of the solutions that she mentioned was doing a treatment that seals the cuticle. And I was like, yes, that feels great on the hair, but we need to get those bonds married back together, And so I think we see this happen a lot in the industry, where they're like, well, they just didn't want to do it. And so they'll even go to the place where they're like, well, I'm not going to convince. I know that that's not right, but they're still just missing helping that person truly see what's going on there and truly see that transformation and how it's possible for them.
That's a great story, Lindsay. Thank you for sharing that. Because I'm as a salon over here, I can relate to that as well. That's probably happened more times than we realize, because most of the time when your team struggles with selling, there's just something simple that we could try. Something simple you could do as easy as tomorrow is just teach them to replace this question. It's kind of like you were just sharing in your story, instead of like, hey, do you want this product? Which she was kind of already shut down because she said she didn't want any products. But instead of that, just saying this statement, hey, based on what you told me today, the biggest thing that would help your hair is this. And so like you could even feel the difference as I said that, right? That second one I said wasn't pressure. That was actually truly guidance. And when professionals and beauty pros begin speaking this way, clients don't feel sold. They feel taken care of.
Yeah, and I think this is truly where salon owners play a huge role, because, service provider owners hope their team figures this out, or but true salon owners, they teach it intentionally. They build systems, they train communication, and ultimately they install identity. They show their teams how to move from being an order taker to being a trusted advisor. And when that happens, retail stops feeling awkward. Service upgrades even stop feeling pushy, and your guests start asking for the solution instead of totally resisting it.
This is actually why we're so passionate about what we're building in the beauty industry, because the industry deserves more than talented people. Like, it deserves leaders. It deserves professionals who truly understand the psychology, the communication, the transformation. It's like professionals who don't just perform services but elevate the experience. And people who go from service provider to beauty pros, and leaders who go from service provider owners to true salon owners, when that happens, the guests win, the team wins, the salon grows, and the entire industry rises.
Yeah, here's the question then. Are the people in your salon performing services, or are they leading transformation? Because the moment a professional understands that selling is caring, they stop shrinking. They stop apologizing. They stop playing small, and they step into the role that they were meant to play, not just as service providers, but as beauty pros. And that shift changes everything.